Just want to add one thing in there. You're talking about tips. The biggest tip is just keep stripping. Stripping is your best friend in fly fishing and in life. Got me through college, and it'll get you out pretty much any problem you have here on the river, you know?
Oh yeah.
Something eats it, keep stripping. Just keep stripping.
I'm surprised these little Western buttons aren't just popping open right now, baby.
Careful what you wish for.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Flies For. Today we're on the banks of the Colorado River talking about flies for streamer fishing. One of our favorite times of year. And our guest today is Justin Carr with the Colorado Angling Company. And we had a great morning fishing, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the flies we were fishing, how we were putting together rigs, some of the decision making, to kind of give people like a holistic view of this kind of special season.
Awesome.
When you think of streamer fishing, is that a year-round activity for you? Preferred method? Like, what does streamer fishing mean to you?
Yeah, I'd say year-round, no matter what, for me. Maybe not always in Colorado year-round. Maybe like a 2-month break or a 2-week break around Christmas. But there's a lot of streamer fishing going on all year long. And then I like to take it to other places, and then it's really good other times of the year in different areas.
So home waters for you for that year-round streamer fishing, minus 2 weeks?
Minus 2 weeks a year, just because Christmas holiday. Yeah. Got to spend time with my kids. Colorado River, Roaring Fork River, Eagle River. Those are the big three that we fish. Kind of central Colorado, located at Colorado Angling Company.
And just like for folks that aren't familiar or are, like what makes those great streamer fisheries?
For me, it's fast. Rocky boulder water, a lot of kind of ambush water. That's what I'm always looking for. So it's not a lot of slow water fishing, which works very well with streamers, but I enjoy fast, visual, visceral streamer fishing.
So this morning we got a little bit of both. We got some of the slow water stuff, and then we fished some nice rapids.
Yeah. Slow water was way better.
Slow water was way better this morning. So let's start with like the starting lineup, right?
Yeah.
At the boat ramp. It was a cold morning.
Yep, chilly. We got there, it was probably 35 degrees this morning in October, which is my first cold day. So
nice. Feels really good.
I have to bring some gear in my boat tomorrow. Yeah.
But like as you're at the boat ramp and you're excited to put your first fly on, like where do you go? Do you go confidence fly? Do you try what's worked before? Like
depends if I'm guiding or if I'm fishing on my own.
Well, today you were fishing on your own.
Yeah, so on my own I always want to see something that I can see really well in the water. That's because I want to see the fish eat the fly. That's what I'm here for. I want to see the trout come get it, and if it's big and bright and then they're going to eat it, then I get to enjoy that part of it. So white, lots of flash, things like that. And then if they don't eat it, then I change. That's
and as far as gear goes, like what was that? What was the starting lineup for gear wise? Like rod, weight, and then are you fishing floaters, sinkers, short leader, super long leader?
Cool. I bought 3 rods in the boat. So I brought
3 streamer rods.
3 streamer rods. Actually, I brought 1 dry fly rod for the pizza, just to fish pizza. So, but I brought a 7-weight Scott Wave with a 250 grain sink, like a full sink for a lighter presentation fly. And then I brought a 6-weight Scott Tidal with about 100 grain intermediate sink for a medium weight fly. And then I brought a floating line 6-weight Scott Centric for a heavy, smaller streamer.
And talk us through each of those kind of like rod fly setups, because I think that's it's pretty cool to be able to dial in your streamer fishing depending on what you're doing.
Cool. Well, like the big 7-weight with the heavier sink, I like it because some of these flies are so light. So you really need the line to get the fly,
So you
down
just picked up the Eric Hurst Thrasher, which is a new one for Umpqua this year.
Right.
Big articulated, super pushy, super swimmy.
Lots of swimming. That's the big, good term for it. It's not like as much of a darting minnow pattern. It's more of a swimming injured fish or bait fish or things like that, just to kind of trigger that eat on the swim, like the angle and how it wants to get through the water.
So before we get into angles and swimming a little bit, because I think
Yep.
that's cool theory to talk about, like
Yep.
how are you rigging up a big fly like the Thrasher on the end of your big heavy sink rod line?
So a fly like that, a big heavy sink weight, or I'm sorry, sinking line, I'd run like a 3 to 4 feet of usually a leader that I'll build out of a 20 pound into somewhere around 16 pound, maybe 12 pound. Personally, I use
It's like relatively short.
relatively short because I want the line that bring the fly down into the strike area rather than the line and then having a big bow, right? So I don't want the fly to float. I want it to get down with the line. That's a huge thing for those sink tips. So some people will even fish like a 12-inch piece of tippet off their sink tip. But
If you really want to drag a fly
if you
down.
want to get it down there, yeah, if you need to, yeah. And sometimes you can put a piece of, a little piece of weight on the front there. You never know. Get it down in there. But yeah, I would fish like 3 to 4 feet of that. And then my next rod is that 6 weight and the medium weight fly. We were fishing this
Agent Scully,
Agent Scully, yeah.
another Eric Hurst pattern for Umpqua this
Yeah.
year.
It's a little smaller, so to me it has less material to sink. So it gets in there a little bit better, and it's got great action. And little rabbit tail, is that rabbit tail?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on the back. And so I fished that with about, I'd say a little bit longer leader, maybe into that 3 to 5 feet. So just getting a little bit longer. I always use fluorocarbon. Personally, I like saltwater fluorocarbon when I do my leaders for streamer fishing because I think it's just what I like.
It's the heavier, denser material that can be in that rocks and edges and timber.
A little stronger, and it can get abraded a little bit, an abrasion, and it still won't break quite as quick as definitely more of a nylon kind of thing. But always fluorocarbon for me. So
Even dry fly fishing?
no. When it's really hard, yes.
Just wanted to check.
For the second fly, when it's really hard, yes, sure.
Okay.
And then the last rod was that 6 weight floating line, and I'll fish, depending on where I'm fishing, with that little smaller, heavier fly. I can fish as long as up to like an 8-foot leader on smaller rivers like the Eagle. When it's crystal clear, bright sun, I will fish a long leader because I feel like, when I see my fly line coming through the rocks, the fish sees my fly line too, and the fly still is going to work its way all the way through. And I feel you might spook them a little bit. So if I go a little bit longer, I'm guaranteeing that I'm going to get that fish. So.
Nice. And when you were talking about the Thrasher, right?
Yep.
Which is a super cool fly. There's a lot of deer in here. There's, folded over dub and legs, followed by big kind of schlopping feathers out the back. We were talking about swim.
Yeah.
And some of the different angles that you're trying to look for. What are you trying to do with this fly in your head? Like, again, you were talking about fishing rapids and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
what are you looking for, and what are you trying to do with the fly?
Some of the bigger swimmy flies, I really like them to change direction, meaning not just go straight and bounce straight, because there's a lot of flies that just bounce straight. And so I like them to kind of do a 3-dimensional movement, which it comes with a lot of the pausing and pausing your strip, pausing your cast, things like that, and getting it to kind of use the tip a little bit more to make the fly do kind of more natural things that an injured fish would do, or hesitate and then kind of trying to piss that brown trout off and get them to come get it. That's that predatory response. That's a big deal with these big swimmy flies. So when everybody else has casted one pattern and they're not eating it, and you have something that does a little bit different, then sometimes that'll be the difference.
So talk to me, if you were guiding one of your clients out of the
Yep.
front of the boat and you guys were working this system, talk to me about some of the things they're doing with their rod, what they're doing with their stripping hand.
For like a big swimmy fly, I like a lot of like moving the fly with the tip of the rod. So always have connection to the fly. I don't want a lot of slack in between you or it. And I always like to return to the fly with my rod tip. So when you do move the fly with the rod tip and you're picking up your slack, when he eats it, you're there, right? Instead of moving your fly across from them, and let's say they eat it across you or behind you, and when he grabs it, you don't have the ability to set the hook. He just kind of
You've got a lot of rod.
He bank robs you a little bit. Yeah, he grabs it and you move and you're like, oh, I think that was one. Yeah, it was one. So I like to continue to go back to it and use the rod, whether it's upstream, downstream, up, down, jig, that kind of thing, in corporation with the strip. So, but miss a lot of fish when your rod is out of position, right? Like behind you, around the bow of the boat, things like that. fussing, messing with your feet,
That's an easy opportunity
Yeah.
to miss one.
wearing chacos, and they get stuck on the loop. That's why I wear Crocs.
Croc man now.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a super cool way to think about getting those, as you said, kind of three-dimensional movements to a fly. Is that
Yeah.
it's not just a cast it in and
Bring it straight back. Sometimes that works though.
and,
Really
and,
good.
and we'll talk about that because that was working really well for us this morning. We were fishing. This is Matt Winkler, sparring partner. We were fishing your 6-weight setup essentially.
Yeah.
And the sparring partner, single rabbit strip. It's got a little bit of movement to it, a lot of flash,
Yeah.
single platform.
Sure.
But this is kind of that like, tell me about how you fish, cast this one in and fish this.
Yeah. So it's not articulated, so it doesn't have that continual kind of braking motion, right? So it's a little bit more of a minnow pattern or a darty fly, right? Likes to dart around. So I like to keep these really tight to my rod tip. So I like to use the strip to make the fly bounce. And when I strip again, usually that's when I hook them, right? So being more straight to the fly, whether I mend it and then I reconnect with the fly to bring it straight through the run or things like that, helps me get that fly really deep in the feeding lane. And so I feel with like a sink tip, if you throw a lot of slack out, sometimes the fly will like swim upstream trying to pick up the slack. But if you connect with it and point right at it and follow it through deeper water, it'll really start to kind of gravitate and really get down in the run. And then if your fly's behind it and you're down in the run, it's coming across the fish. So
And that's a great way to think of it because the fly's moving, the boat's moving.
Yep.
It allows the line to actually do what the line's
do what it
supposed
wants
to do.
to do. Like if you were on a lake, it would just sink, right? So if you're on a river, you got to help it sink. So there's a lot of playing around with it to try to figure out how do I get the fly deep enough. And we talked about it today. We were like, how's that fly? How's it? Is it up on the surface? He's like, yeah, it's up on the surface the whole time. So we have to maybe cast downstream, mend to the left, and then strip it directly towards us to start getting it to really gain, get in there. So.
And then once it's under the water, talk to me about like how to keep one of these swimmy flies moving, or not a big swim fly, but one of these more minnowy, darty flies, as you would say.
Yeah,
moving through there.
You can either do like tip movements while you strip at the same time. That's what I like a lot, especially on smaller rivers. But I do a lot of pointing at the fly and keeping my line super tight and just using my strip to make sure that the fly moves, right? And I'm coming back to it.
This little motion you're making here is like, the rod's moving feet. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of additional movement.
Kind of popping it a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah, jigging it, Saltwater, you'd like drop the tip and try to get your popper to go, right? And it just gives it a little bit more pop, right? And that's a big deal. And then how you strip the fly is a huge thing that I work with my clients. I don't like saltwater, I like to do a nice long pull and keep my hand on the line so I can feel the fish, right? At the very end when he grabs that crab. But when I throw streamers on freshwater, I like to get the line out of my hand so the fly jumps. And then I go right back to the hand. So, because he usually eats it after it jumps, so I want to be right back on the line. So I don't have that time to go back and grab like saltwater.
And when they eat the fly, what happens then?
Try to hook them.
What's your best philosophy?
Do something.
Even this is
Anything you can, yeah. I don't like this, that's the least, but sometimes, if you're bringing a fly this way and you want to do it one more time and you're out of a strip, I'll move the rod tip to like give it another strip, right? Sometimes you see him eat it and you want to go the opposite direction, you can do that too. Sometimes, like Mike Iaconelli, the bass fisherman, I like to jump in the air and scream at it,
try to fall out of the boat.
Yeah, exactly, and then I scream at everybody. Yeah, I miss him. He's like this big. So
size of the fly you're fishing.
The biggest thing is I like to move, like whatever happens, I can't tell you one thing or another when I'm guiding. If he eats it, try to do something. So if you have another strip locked up and ready, strip. If he's coming through and you're out of a strip, your hand's down on the line, try to hit him with the rod. Right? Don't trout set too often. Yeah, it happens.
Never absolutes
Yeah,
in the world,
sure.
right?
Do whatever it takes. Move the fly.
And then that kind of tweener setup. I know you mentioned one of the flies you really like is the Swim Coach from
Yeah.
Charlie Craven.
Yep.
We've got that in a few different colors.
It's kind of a swimmy, more of a swimmy medium-sized fly that still has tons of action for, those little deeper pools and things like that, and still on the river, still enjoying, fishing that medium sink tip stuff, but something that'll really move around. I like it actually for like smallmouth and pike and things like that. Those are that maybe want to see something that's a little bit more, a little larger than a straightforward, you know, see a woolly bugger style fly, right?
Kind of thin mini.
Yeah, thin mint. Yep,
You
exactly.
know, a lot of fish have fallen into the thin mint.
Love the thin mint. Love it, love it.
All of the flies that we've kind of talked about thus far have had, I would say, a relatively heavy dose of flash. What's
Yeah.
your philosophy on kind of bright flies versus dull flies, all that stuff?
I have like my my like step down of my day, you know, like what colors I start with and which way I go. I always like fishing bright to start, just because if they're gonna eat the bright stuff, I can put the box away, and just I want to see the fish. I want to see the fly. I want to see the fish, and when they don't eat that, then I'll start kind of breaking it off. So I'll start with something bright, and then I'll come down a little bit, maybe to a yellow, maybe to an olive. Then I start getting a little more natural, and then I maybe end up at black, and it'll be
That's the last one, is black.
maybe
Light
it's
to
the
black.
first one. It could be the opposite, right? So it's like, you know, maybe it's sunny out. I'm gonna try this, but you know what worked yesterday might not work today, but probably will. I don't know. So I'll change. Like we went through one run at the top, and we fished one color, and I had a couple really short grabs, and they were nice fish. I could see them, and they kind of nipped at the tail, but they didn't eat it. So I got done with that run, and I changed right away, and then we didn't catch anything. We didn't see anything. So I changed that within another run, and then we got into, like, I think the third run is where we started hooking them, and then it was on. So
All right, so we've covered a bunch of kind of like setups here of what we were fishing today. We are out here. It is the cusp of fall. The colors are beautiful.
it's very nice out.
It is what a lot of us in fly fishing think of kind of like as streamer season.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us why the fall is kind of identified as streamer season for a lot of folks? Not you, but a lot of other people.
Well, from a guide standpoint, not me maybe, but I have a little free time now, so I get to go fishing. So that's why fall is fantastic. Got today, you know, this is my first day to not be guiding pretty much all summer, and get to go fishing with you guys and
Awesome.
go have fun. It's fantastic out, and a lot of people, you know, the water temps are really coming down, so fish are happier in the middle of the day, I'd say. You know, they're still moving around at night, but a lot of times in the middle of summer, the water's hot, and they're not chasing down streamers. They're kind of hanging out, right? They're hiding in the bottom of the hole, getting some midges, you know, just kind of chilling. So right now they tend to move around a bit. People always, it's accepted that they think that they start to bulk up, you know, before it spawn. That's a good reason to do it. So those brown trout are going to spawn soon, so they start moving around and start eating a little bit more. You know, all the fish start moving around a little bit because they have to feed a little bit before it gets cold. So that's just like the springtime, though. I love streamer fishing in spring because the fish start moving around because they haven't been eating, so they start really kind of getting into it. But fall, this next month and a half, 2 months, is just prime time streamer fishing on our particular rivers, and I think it kind of starts in higher country and it gets better, and then the lower country starts getting better and better later in the fall. So that's my progression. So, and when it starts getting cold in the high country, the fish might slow down a little bit, and the water is really
There's
cold.
that kind of perfect window of
Yeah.
feed bag
Yep,
life.
exactly. Yeah. then I think they spawn a little earlier sometimes when the water's colder. So I'll go find a little bit warmer water.
And then, you know, we're on the Colorado, bigger water,
Yeah.
bigger flies, bigger fish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to me about how you approach some of your other fisheries, the Roaring Fork, the Eagle, a little bit more intimate water, right?
Yeah.
Clarity's a little different.
Yep. Structure is a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of that
Sure.
stuff?
I guess on the Eagle, and like I do a lot of streamer wade fishing on the Eagle, and that's where I like to fish. Not necessarily sink tips all the time, like some of the lighter, definitely a floating line for me on the Eagle, for most of the Eagle, and a little bit longer leader, floating line with a little heavier fly. And that's what I like to kind of get down and into the pockets, around the rocks, things like that, like in front of the fish. And so that would be my biggest difference. And I do a lot of less big strips on the Eagle, and those smaller rivers, I'll do a lot more like rod tip manipulation of the fly, right? Like keeping the line tight with my strip, but moving the fly with my rod. Because I feel like they're going to come get it if you get into their house, right? They're going to kick you out and go eat you. And so if I can just get it in there, they're going to come get it if it's the right pattern. So I do a lot of like pausing and kind of, you know, slap and tickle kind of stuff.
Slap and tickle.
Yeah.
Love
That's
it.
yeah.
With the clearer water, and I mean, clarity's great today.
Yeah.
Like, are you able to fish to more intentional structure in scenarios like that?
Yeah, I think so. It's a lot less kind of swinging for the home run in the dark water, right? Which I love to do too, because you never know who's in there, right? And that's why you do it. So, but when you can see them in the good pocket water and things like that, you can kind of find your buckets and think that that bucket has a fish in it. I'm going to swim through that bucket, kind of stuff, and really focus on sight fishing, and that's a good time. So there's home runs in the dark water and fun stuff in the sight fishing. So.
If you had to tie on one streamer and fish it all year, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, you know, I love a sculpin pattern. So that's kind of my go-to. I feel like the bigger brown trout feed on sculpin, and that's kind of my go-to. So baby gongas, double baby gongas. I like articulated flies.
You like that extra little kick.
Yeah, like a little bit of, I can stop it, but it keeps moving. You know, the rims keep spinning.
Gangster.
Yeah. Every time I stop. Yeah. But yeah, I think I would fish a sculpin if I had a choice. Something I could see, swing for the home run, if that was my only choice.
And then if you had to have one time of year for the rest of the year to fish, what's that little window you'd have for the whole year?
Time of year, I'd say, you know, early fall. Early fall's this time. Yep, that's when I get some time and the fishing is great and less people. I like going out when there's fewer people on the river, and
so only a handful fewer today.
There is, yeah. It's much less today. We haven't seen one float by.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So if you have a whole section of river to yourself, it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong, or something illegal.
And it sounds like you spend a lot of time like actually trying to figure this out. I've watched a lot of people, I've been in the boat with a lot of people that put on one fly and they just sit there and hammer and wait for the one fish that wants to eat the one fly.
Sure.
Where you're trying to put together the puzzle a little bit more.
I feel like they're going to eat it. So I'm going to figure out what it is, right? And even if they are eating it, maybe there's one that they're eating even better, right? So maybe I can change it up just a little bit and get more action from it instead
better
of just
response.
one. Yeah. And maybe, you know, there's some days where you're catching smaller fish and I'm going to take that fly off because I don't want to catch any more small fish. And I'm going to fish.
Had enough of that.
Yes. Or maybe, you know, I no disrespect to rainbow trouts, but I like brown trout. So if I'm catching a bunch of rainbows with one pattern, I might cut that off and throw it in the water, you know, get rid of it. And change for something a little bigger and something that like a meat eater would eat. So, yep.
What's your number one tip you would leave someone with as far as fishing streamers?
Everything I work on every single day with my clients is line control. Line control is everything. So from the cast to the presentation to bringing it back in to recasting. That's all we really
Will you talk us through that whole cast to cast scenario?
Sure. So you got to get the line out, right? So you have to have control. The biggest thing for me is I don't have a lot of time in these fast water. So I want to be able to move the fly right when it lands. That's a huge thing. So when the fly lands, I want to be ready to strip. So if the fly lands and I have to put my trigger finger in or mess around with stuff or get it off my thing or, you know, like get it out of my chaco, then I'm not going to catch the fish because I'm already past like 50 feet of water and the fly's dangling behind the boat. But if I can get control when it lands and start stripping the fly right away, it gives me the ability to stop it, pause it, let it sink, keep moving it through the water and get a good presentation for that. And that's how you know the fish doesn't want it or does want it or, you know, whatever, so you can change. And then as you strip it in, you're gonna have all this slack that you have to cast back out. So a big thing I try to do is teach people to feed the slack while they cast instead of shooting the slack after they cast. So that's a hard one. It takes a few days of practice, but if I can feed enough slack while I'm in my casting process, then I can have tight line and a smaller shot of line at the end of the casting process so I can get my trigger finger in and I can start moving the fly. And it's so hard to do, but that really, when you start getting it, then when you can really have a really productive day.
And then sitting in the center seat of a drift boat or raft,
Yep.
right? How important is boat positioning and working with your folks casting and working the streamer?
That's kind of everything for guides, fishing guides, right? I row as hard as I can in the right water, and then I don't row as hard in the other water and try to move the boat through it. But some of the, I really like the fast stuff, so I'll row really hard in the fast stuff, and I'll keep the boat the right distance off the bank so they don't have to change their cast distance over and over. They can really work down each run as you go down the river. And you got to go around the rocks and sometimes go out and fish the left side and fish the right side. There might be fish anywhere, so it's all the boat position is very important.
Well, if someone wanted to do some streamer fishing with you, where are they finding you?
ColoradoAnglingCompany.com. On Instagram, Colorado Angling Company.
You're around, it sounds
We
like.
are around, yeah. All 24/7, 365. We're fishing.
Love it.
Yep.
Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Flies 4. Make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of this great content. Thank you, Justin, for joining us. We're going to get back to fishing and have a little bit of fun. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Hell yeah.